nothing bad, they didn't say anything
It
bad
was
about it.
70 million when
It
we
was
first started
all
talking about
exactly
it.
what.
That's what the
Same stuff.
newspaper picked up. And so I ended
Well,
up-
let's go ahead.
They're way off.
I guess we can
Well,
get,
yeah, and we've
It'll
got
be
Jing's
higher.
presentation
Okay.
Yeah.
first.
So-
I will, did you,
well, welcome policy board members. We do have a quorum here, and Senator Clements, welcome to you. Happy that you're joining us. We have a short presentation from Jing, if you'd like to go first on the agenda, and
yeah. And let's see, share content. And let's see. And just for your information, this is a database that our planner, too, Jing, has been working on to help provide the public with better information about the MPO's projects and transportation improvement program. And I will let him give a brief demonstration of what we anticipate putting on our website. Okay? Jing?
Did we run out of paper?
Thank you. Yeah, so I built up this web application, two purposes. The first one is make it easier to manage and share the transportation project information with the public. And the second one is make it easier for public to provide input to our transportation project. So we can visit it as a guest in the first place. So what you see is the two database, MPO, TIP, and MTP. I just, in the last few days, I uploaded all the project information here for the proposed transportation plan update. You are able to do all kinds of filters by the location type, priority, and also you can cross filter all the project database. So it's pretty powerful database, and the filter function is viable, and I think it's make it easy to identify a category of project. And you click here, you will see the whole project information, including a map, location map. And if you log in, you will be able to provide public comment on that. So let's log in first. So this is all fake account right now, but and it's my daughter, so. So when you have an account, you will be able to track that project in your dashboard. You will be able to add your name to a project. So when we look at the project list, we will know who is interested in that project and specific contact information. You are also able to raise your concern about the project and send directly to the MPO's planner. Okay, I will close this. When you go into the project information page, okay, it's not
We're
loaded.
not London.
Yeah. You can comment here, but right now we set it as the MPO planner will have the authority to preview the comments before you post it on the website.
Gotcha.
So this is the basic rules for that.
That's good.
And they can also like or dislike, so and share that project. So this is about the MTP project. TIP project is a little bit different because it has a different database structure. So instead of some filters for the MTP project, TIP project has more focused on the different phase. So when we got the TIP project information from DOH, actually each phase of project is a project. So what I did here is combine all the phases into one project, so it's easier for the public to understand. So if a project has information for like for right of way or construction, it will show up. If it did not, it will just won't be able to show up, and they will be able to show and to filter different funding source for that project, and also to see if a project is related to an MPO TIP project or MTP project, planning project, or it's a regional significance. And this is the similar information page for TIP project. The difference is it has a phase information here. And this is location and draw comments. So last thing I want to show is the dashboard. So if you are tracking a project, it will show up here to show what the project that you are tracking, and you are also able to see your name is on any project contact list. So you can just erase you from the contact list or something like that. And that is what it is so far. I still continue improving, refine this website. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And we're very excited about this database because we think
That is great.
That's really cool.
that we will be able to really step up our game with public involvement at our website. So we're excited about that, and that will definitely help our public involvement. Thanks,
All right,
Mr.
well,
Chairman.
thank you. Well, the purpose of this meeting today, from our regular MPO meeting from last week, was that obviously all of you are aware that we went through the process of the long-term transportation plan. There's been great interaction at a number of levels. The consulting team, they've done which they're on the call with us from Stantec. They've done a great job helping guide this. So what we wanted to do this evening, the process from here is that once this is released, and Bill, correct me if I misstep here, there's going to be a 45-day public comment period. Then it will come back to the MPO for final approval.
Correct.
So what we wanted to take the chance to do here today is allow you all as MPO members, if there's things that you want to tweak or have discussion about as far as strategically, something could be in a tier 1, but maybe strategically we've got something else lower that maybe could be realized in the next 5 to 10 years, or move things around. But we need to do this before it goes to public comment. And what that saves you is not having to amend it after and slow the process down. So it could be that you all say, hey, whatever's been presented, let's go with it, and that's where we want to go with this. The other thing that I thought it was very important that we at least have this opportunity to discuss it is to make sure everyone understands in the blue area shaded $118 million. Those are projects that are already funded. Then you come down to tier 1, and they are fiscally constrained projects that had to fit into that category. And I think it's a 10-year average, isn't it?
Yes.
So it would be $218 million. And frankly, all these projects, as the consultants explained, they're all important. So but there's some that we could realize maybe quicker than others, or we have to bundle funding together. So with that, I'm going to shut up and call on you all to see what your thoughts and comments would be. Yes.
And Mr. Chairman, I would emphasize that these priority lists, Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3, under the federal regulations, have to be fiscally constrained, which means that we've developed a budget in working with the Division of Highways and the Department of Transportation, Mountain Line, Federal Transit Administration, to identify what our anticipated funding stream is. And so each tier is a tier in time. Essentially, the first tier is 8 to 10 years, second tier is the following 10 years, and the third tier is the final 10 years within our planning horizon. Tier 4 is either funded by other sources or it is simply unfunded at this point. And so to maintain that fiscal constraint, our consultants have developed a spreadsheet with the cost estimates for all of these projects that also takes into account inflation. So if the policy board chooses to move a project from one tier to another, we will be able to see on the fly the fiscal impacts of moving that project. And so now I need to figure out how to give him
Is he able to see our sheet?
the spreadsheet that you see there
Yes.
is the spreadsheet he is working with.
No. but
Senator
it's
Clements,
Senator-
can
it's
you-
Senator Clements.
So he understands what.
He will see the spreadsheet.
Okay, great. That's what I want to make sure when you show it. Okay,
That,
there we go.
that Tim is working with.
And just a couple of other things I want to add too. If you look into the far column that says notes, you'll notice that there's local priorities in varying
Yes.
tiers too. So nothing's perfect because it does have to fit within these constraints. But what we want to do is be able to discuss, and I'll just give you an example, and I'm going to cut to the,
Yeah.
maybe cut right to the chase. Greenback Road, for example, is in our funded projects. And right now, we have Phase 2 and Phase 3 as Tier 1 projects. Well, if for some reason the one that's funded doesn't go, there's no reason to have 2 and 3 in your Tier 1s because you can't get to Phase 2 and Phase 3 until you do Phase 1.
Well, you could try and get the others, but it would,
Yes.
it would be very difficult.
The reason
to
you have a
justify.
Phase 2 and a Phase 3 is to match up with a,
Those are more
Yeah.
geographic phases than
That's
actual
correct.
sequential
Sequential,
phases. But it, you know.
if you don't do one, it doesn't make a whole lot of practical sense.
To do the other
To
two.
the others is my point, so.
Yeah.
Hard to defend it.
Exactly.
Well, I do want to take an opportunity to thank Senator Clements for coming on, and for the ones that may not know in the group or it's on joining us by Zoom. He is the chair of transportation on the Senate side, and so he carries a pretty heavy stick as to what goes out there and how. And that's what he was interested in when we talked earlier in the week, is to become familiar with the process. He does work with another MPO also, and he also sits on the Route 268 board
Right.
that I sit on for the county. So we work together on several projects, and that's why I'm glad to hear that he's able to see the spreadsheet and follow along what we're talking about, because he was and he did travel Greenback the other day to
Sorry.
look and see, to familiarize himself with that process, or with that project.
Great. If there, go ahead.
I got a quick question. Thank you, Senator Clements, for participating. Bill, I'm looking on the tip projects, it has Greenback Road Improvement Segment 1. And then down below under Tier 1, it had Greenback Road Improvement Segment 1.
That's a typo. It
Okay,
should be segment 3.
Okay.
Okay.
That's a typo.
that
Tim,
was
please
one.
correct that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay, if I can ask two things, for Senator Clements and for the public to hear. The first is, we'll deal with Greenback Road second. I really want to discuss one other issue that is key to this MMPO and has developed in the last couple of years, and if you could just explain about the Harmony Grove interchange, why people don't see it on here, and the reason where it really is at, because of the TIF collaborative agreement. And this is really important. I want to make sure Senator Clements understands that, so people realize we didn't forget about it, so.
Sure.
Yes,
And I would emphasize that the funded by other sources.
yes,
Box, as you want to call it, or the bucket, is not showing any indication of whether or not the MPO holds a project as a high priority. But when a project is to be funded by another source, it should not count against the MPO's regular allocation under what's should be budgeted. Now, if the MPO wishes to make it a Tier 1 project, it would count against our budget. But there's also a funding stream attached to it. And that has an implication for the Division of Highways. And so with this project, the Division of Highways will be fronting the money, and then the TIF district will pay it back.
Right.
And so it would not be correct to completely hit the MPO's budget for the full price of the project, because there's another funding source for it. But we also need to take into account that the hit that the Department of Transportation will be taking by moving the project to a Tier 1. And so basically, the idea is that we've worked out and discussed with our friends at DOH is they charge us interest. To put it as a simple, easy way to understand, so we, for fronting the money for the project. And in discussing this project and the anticipated payback period, what we agreed to do was keep the full cost of the project, which we have averaged, the IJR has identified 3 different costs. We average those costs to $41,600,000. And we said the interest charge for DOH moving it to the Tier 1 and everything would be about 25% of that, or approximately $10,000.
10 million.
10 million.
I mean, 10 million. Oh, that was wishful thinking on my part, sorry. To
That's a
$10 million.
discount.
Yeah.
So if the policy board chooses to move that project to Tier 1, the impact on Tier 1 is not $40 million. The impact on Tier 1 is $10 million.
Gotcha.
So if right now, the list you see for the Tier 1 projects is fiscally constrained, and if that project were to move in, you would need to figure out, and Tim has it on the spreadsheet, what other projects you would want to take out and move to Tier 2.
Well, let me ask you this.
Or another tier.
What's it, yeah.
What would you, so, again, the priorities of all these projects doesn't matter really which tier they're in my opinion. It matters what you can do in the limited period of years that you
Right.
can do them, which certainly the interchange looks like it's going to happen over that period of time. So with that said, if what's been proposed as our director, what would you propose to move down that would maybe take a longer period of time to get
Right.
funding in order to move that one up?
All of them are very important projects. They wouldn't be there. They score very highly. In thinking about what work has been done by the Division of Highways recently, and also about what the city of Morgantown has been working on, the one project that kind of pops to mind is really the University Avenue Complete Streets Improvement Project. It's a corridor that a lot of effort has been expended on, and we are going to keep expending effort on it. But for example, we have the Beechhurst Spot Improvement Project that will be ongoing that impacts that. It's kind of, we will have stirred the public up in that area a lot, and I think we need to give it, relatively speaking of all these projects, a little bit more time to settle. And so,
So your suggestion would be to move that one into a Tier 2
correct.
And move the other one.
and to free up.
If that was the policy board's choice to
I'd
I'd like to
move-
make a motion.
What is, well, tell me what the
Well,
other one is called.
May I clarify something
Yeah.
about
It's a work
this
session.
meeting? This is a work session.
It's a recommendation.
It's a recommendation, so,
I'd
we
like to
would-
make a recommendation.
Yes, and
that-
Can,
I'll let Jim go ahead.
yeah, just let me ask a clarifying question. So what is Harmony Grove, where is it right now on this?
C11,
it's C11,
In
under
alternate.
alternative funding. It's very bottom.
which is on
Way
the,
down.
The last
It's
column.
C1.
it's C1.
All right,
C1.
Oh,
sorry.
Right there
Yeah,
at
I-
the
on
top.
on the
Yeah.
next page.
All right,
And the 41 million is really not correct, but we're gonna say it because it was there's 3 projects, what, 31, 37, and a $50 million?
It's 30, I think it's 34 and 36.
6 and 50, so it got skewed up.
Right.
And we believe it's more of the 35, the 40.
Right.
So it really wouldn't be that much more, but what we're trying to do is make this clear because we know what's about to be developed for those businesses out there. And this is one more thing that we can show, and just to make sure and to tell the senator, this isn't, we set a precedent several years ago with Exit 153. This county decided to use the TIF funds in the collaboration agreement, and we built that in a very quick amount of time and funded it and gave the money back to the DOH. So the DOH knows we're able to do that. So this isn't the first time, setting a precedent. Sean, did you want to add to that? Because that's key.
One thing that's also important is the need is there.
Yes.
We need it for, obviously, safety with the 2 schools. We need it for access to Westover. But more importantly, the factory that so far has gone unnamed, it will be installing major equipment and testing in July.
Yes.
They will go to production in November. There's 60 to 100 tractor trailers will be coming in and out of that facility every day. So this has to happen.
And the thing that's also is important, these are manufacturing jobs.
Yes.
That's in that industrial park. And there's at least 2 to 3 other major projects that are on hold,
Yeah.
will not commit until the state commits that they're going to do that interchange. It doesn't have to be built, but it has to at least be committed.
Right.
The governor and the DOH has to make that commitment that they want to put that forward. And that's what's holding up a lot of major decisions that has to be out there. And if it means that it helps to put it on tier 1, because I can tell you that when I see Secretary Carmichael's, it doesn't matter for a mile between us, he'll throw his hands up and he says, I know what you want. And so we've had the meetings down there, everybody's online and on board with it. I am a little troubled by the 40 million number out there, because it's not clearly what we've been told by the developers is where it's at. I'm not saying it won't get there when the final design's there. I do not know. But the design that they have in place, I thought was 32, but it could be 34.
Well, there's
I'm
a
not
reason
sure.
why.
There's 3 alternatives, right?
Yeah, right. And we were provided information on the draft interchange justification report, and they had 3 alternatives presented. And what we did was we averaged the price to try.
But we might want to explain why the third one's $50 million.
Well, the third one is very complex.
And you need to then have to also,
It's a lot more right away.
Well, a lot more right-of-ways
Right-of-way, a
where-
lot of-
So that's not the type
there's no
diamond.
right-of-ways at
No,
all
it's not
in the
the type
$32
diamond.
million now.
Yeah.
Which, well, to be clear, which one are we looking at basically now? Is it the tight diamond?
Well,
And that's what they're calling
That
it.
appears to be the
That appears to be the one that
But-
everyone wants to do.
That-
We
that-
had that
that-
three.
Yeah.
Well, this is
Well, if I may interject, this is Brian Carr
Sure.
from Highways. The interchange that ultimately kind of gets chosen is really more up to what the Federal Highway Administration will approve. I think all the alternatives, I think they've shown can work.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it'll be, have to run through Federal Highway Administration to approve which, kind of alternative we can move forward. But everybody also has to understand that there's still a lot to go on with this. If I may just kind of say what I have heard or what I know is the IJR, from what I was told, is supposed to be getting submitted back to the DOH here very soon, within the next few weeks, which will then ultimately get submitted on to FHWA for consideration and approval of an interchange.
Right.
However, there's a lot of other parts and pieces that still have to happen before Federal Highways can make a determination with any of this. The environmental aspect has to go through. And from what I'm understanding, we're still months away. Months, 8, 9, 10 months or more away from getting enough environmental for FHWA to make a conclusion on the IJR, on the interchange. Furthermore, and this is another aspect that really hasn't been touched on, is in what we've already seen happen at exit 153 and what's going on at 155, the I-79 was not expanded to accommodate the growth that has happened. And I understand there's been a consultant that has done a lot of review all the way from the 79-68 split area all the way on up past 155. And the conclusions of all of that, which is still, you know, in flux a little bit, but they've done a lot of studies. The DOH has done what we call an interstate needs study, looking at not just I-79, but all the interstates in the state. When we're having to, you know, look at replace or redo bridges, FHWA essentially is requiring us to, hey, can you justify using our money? Do you need to expand it to 6 lanes or not? So all of that being said, also within your, and I don't know, Mike, if you can blow the screen up anymore, but it's so small I can barely read it. But those other portions in the Tier 2 and Tier 3 that include expansion of I-79 from all the way from 148 or the 68 split all the way up past 155. So this is more than just about an interchange. I'm all for it, don't get me wrong. But even if an interchange, and it could come down to the caveat that FHWA will approve an interchange if and only if the DOH is committed to also expanding the interstate for all of that. So that could potentially be, I don't know, Mike, somebody can point out the I-79 Westover sections there. That was, you know, another, you know, $8 million on one and another $30 million on another. So, you know, by the time all said and done, you know, there's another, you know, $40–50 million that you're talking about that would ultimately have to get thrown into the mix with this interchange. Because FHWA, believe you me, they're not going to approve an interchange and then 3 years later we're going back and looking at expanding I-79, which is a situation that's going on right now with 153.
However,
So-
let me,
So there's a lot of moving parts still with all of this. There's still a lot of unanswered questions. And, you know, at the end of the day, I think everybody would like to see this happen. I'm just trying to explain the, you know, and I think Bill as well, we're just trying to explain the rules of what has to happen in a long-range plan being fiscally constrained. But there's a lot of moving parts, a lot of other things that will affect not just an interchange. So I wanted to throw that out there for everybody to think about and mull over, because it is an important aspect of this interchange and,
Right.
and the whole corridor for that matter.
Those thoughts are very good and very helpful, and I think that, at least speaking personally on this, I would like to see us, if we don't take this first step of getting it in Tier 1, because we're in a time constraint deadline to hit that May 15th deadline.
It's the May Policy Board meeting.
And frankly, and that avoids us going back and making amendments at a later date. Frankly, I'd love to have the problem to come back and say, hey, we have to get these others into this, whether it's 2 years down the road. And I think, but I think what by doing this, we show that it is such a high local priority that it needs to happen ahead of time, at least this portion.
and that's what I was going to say. You're right, there's a lot of possibilities of if and ands, but we were told the same thing, that this county couldn't do exit 153 in the time period, and it's never been done before. So what I think is, the commitment tonight is by this group, do we want to put it in Tier 1? I know Sean made a recommendation, I strongly second it, and I would hope the others could do this now, so we set a precedent that we need that in at this time and pull out that other one that was discussed.
I can tell you, I'm all in favor of doing whatever will at least speed this process up, because I'm at a boiling point right now. I can tell you that I don't know who's in control, who the IJR report, where it's at, what we're honing on. I was under the understanding that the environmental studies were all done, completed, and that's not what I've been projecting out to other people down there. And somewhere along the line, we're getting our wires crossed. I'd like to actually, Bill, if we could, if you could give me some kind of a spreadsheet that shows exactly what we're talking. My understanding was also that, yes, we had to have a commitment on those extra additional lanes, but that was simply that we had to work it into the project somewhere.
That's right.
The only ones that would be affected right now are the ones that's on the project that basically would widen those lanes out, which should have been done from day one to make that truck lane so they're not pulling back into traffic.
Right.
And that would take care of that. The bridge is included in on the, whatever the money, or it's 34,
Exactly.
41 million.
That's all included.
That's all included into there. So that took care of all that area that's in there. I'm just a little disgusted with this whole process, and it seems like something keeps kicking it down the road when we clearly need this thing done in this area to move this project on. We have a factory that's going to come in there and put a load of traffic into Westover, and nobody in Westover wants to see that anymore. We have one group that's in there that wants to expand. They handle chemicals. They would rather not, for safety reasons, put that many more trucks through that area. I'm just telling you, to the policy board, I just,
Mr. Stadler, the consultant that's working with the industrial park, one of the consultants, I just spoke with her, and she said that the IGAR shows that the lane widening at this point is not needed until the 2030, 2035 timeframe.
that's exactly the same
That's
thing
what
I
we
was
thought.
told.
Yeah, thank you.
So just to let you know that we do have that piece of information.
But they need to move it on
Yeah.
too, because we're talking about the trucks that'll be using once everything's up and going. But right now, there's 60 loads of steel going into that one building. It's up
Well,
on it.
it appears, unless there's someone with huge opposition, that we can move forward with Commissioner Sikor's recommendation and ask the consultants to change that
Yes.
formula based on that.
Well, let me ask one question. Oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I did want to point out, this is a good opportunity to point out two things that we've dealt with frequently. One of them was this particular project. Before, we wanted to take action on it, but it wasn't a tier 1 project. So that just shows you the importance of having it in the tier 1.
Yeah, good point.
That we do that now through the planning process, so
Good
that
idea.
when the money's available, we can do it. That's
Exactly.
what this whole thing is for.
Yes.
It's very difficult to come back and move a project that we didn't have
Yes.
on the plan up into that slot. The second thing is, and this is what Delegate Statler brought up, you know, the aggravation that our community has every time there's a project. We say, as the MPO, we say, yes, we want this exit. We think this is great. We don't get to pick whether it's option 1 or option 2 or option 3. We don't get to make that determination, and I think that causes a lot of consternation among the community members because, yeah, we want to see this good thing happen, but then when the drawings and the plans come out, oh, we don't like that. Well, that's not in our purview, and this is another good example of that, and that's why we averaged to the funding to try and make it fiscally constrained is a reasonable approach. But it's the same problem this body deals with all the time. And this is kind of a benign example of those concerns that we have and we deal with on a lot of projects.
My question would be then to the chairman and to Bill, and it's just a recommendation tonight because we can't take a
Official
vote
vote.
on it, an official vote, but does the 45-day period start then from the recommendation tonight, or does it have to wait until the vote is taken?
No, this is to put it out for public comment,
Yeah, this
is-
so
Yeah.
you will be
Starts
informed when you vote.
Yeah.
So once we get, and the information from Tim, it will be put up on our website, and Tim is running the consultant's website, which is the official website for comments. It will be posted, and the public comment will start that day.
Good.
So that comment period under this schedule should end on or about May the 10th.
And we'll
The only
take
thing
it up
I
at our
didn't-
May meeting for the official vote.
Yes.
The only thing I did want to happen is down the road somewhere, we have another holdup saying that we didn't give the 45-day period. I want everybody to have the opportunity to comment. I have
That's why
no
we're meeting
problem with
tonight.
that. But
So-
daggone, I don't want any more roadblocks.
Yes.
No pun
So,
intended.
so what is proposed tonight will become
So far.
part of what
Yes.
goes to the public?
That will become part of what goes to the public, and it will probably be the official period will start tomorrow morning when we make sure we have everything up.
To be perfectly clear, I was suggesting that my recommendation was we take C1, it's in the alternative funding dependent projects, the industrial park access improvements, Harmony Grove Interchange, and move it up to Tier 1 and move project M49C, University Avenue Complete Street Improvements, segments 3 to Tier 2.
Right. And what that will show, and Tim has made that change, I believe, on the spreadsheet, is that will still leave about $8 million worth of projects that could go into Tier 1.
And before we go into that, I'd like to do the second part of my question, because I know Senator Clemens his time is limited. I think we need to get some clarification. I really appreciate you being here this evening, because the Greenbag Road project has been just what was stated earlier, a thorn in all our sides, because we have started this project, and I believe you received the letter in 2013.
That's correct.
We then did the studies, then we came back on the 15th and we had the answer. Then there was questions, so we then went back in 2017. We went through the entire public process. We went through everything. We do not have a corridor around the city of Morgantown. And I will tell you, and I agree with Jenny, we have so many trucks and cars going through the city of Morgantown. We need an alternative. This is an alternate route, which has always been the truck route for Greer Limestone. That's why it was built. Only this time, we're actually going to build it to hold the trucks, make it wide, and move it all away from Saberton. And we've done that intersection. We are moving it across, and then we're doing, and I'll let Bill explain, the grant that we are applying for to continue it through. And again, Senator Clemens, I really appreciate you being here, because the biggest problem we have heard, and I've been as a county commissioner for 10 years, is we don't speak as one voice. And MMPO, and sometimes I agree with them, sometimes I don't, but when we go to Charleston, we are all together voicing our opinion and saying, here's how the federal funds, we would like to see it go.
Right.
And then we pass it on. For what is going on, and we have to stop this, and I'm sure you see it in other areas, in other counties. You get something in a project going, and then you get a small group of people that go down and know to talk to the right person and stop it. So I want everyone to speak, so they explain about the Greenbag Road, and if there's anything anybody else wants to add. We do not make the decision on the roundabouts or the plan, but we are saying it's a priority that needs to be done in Milan County. And I'll be quiet with that.
Yeah, and just to let you know,
Yeah.
we are in the process of preparing a RAISE grant application for the design of the longest portion remaining in the Greenbag Road corridor,
Which you took, yeah.
which is the portion from Lucky Lane where the currently programmed project ends on the, I always want to call it the west side, and then all the way down to West Virginia 7, essentially. And what we are seeking is a grant to design the project, to turn it over to DOH, so then we can seek construction funding for it. And so we're anticipating that would be a $2.4 million grant application. It'll be looking at it as a multimodal corridor, but also, of course, to make sure that it's capable of handling the truck traffic, which has been of concern to everybody. And this project, as Commissioner Bloom rightly noted, was first developed in our 2013 Transportation Plan Update. The MPO did a operational study of it, and the DOH supported that and actually did program a major section of it over approximately 1.8 miles. That's the section that's been under discussion and includes the roundabouts. And we have that section I just mentioned, which is also about another 1.8, 1.9 miles. And a shorter section, which is also bad, is at Don Knotts Boulevard.
Right.
It's a real twisty intersection that comes out on 119. But we decided for the raise grant to take the larger, longer portion that's the most complex portion with stream crossings and those sorts of issues first for our raise grant application.
Did anyone else want to?
Does anyone else have any comments?
I just wanted to, so we've heard from the county side, now you're hearing from the city side, just that this is important, that all the sections we want to get completed, we want to get completed the section down toward the river as well, that the truckers have mentioned that after they go down the curvy part right by the river, that last turn is problematic. So along with the raised grant portion is a different portion.
Yeah.
But along with the raised grant portion, that we have more left to do. So
Yeah.
whatever we can do to keep that
Right.
moving forward. We are speaking with one voice, and we would like to continue doing that.
Yeah, and those are the two projects that are currently in Tier 1.
Right,
Right.
right.
So we're putting as much emphasis on it as we can.
Is the roundabouts designed, or what is the style? I guess Brian Carr could answer that. Is that the way it's designed now?
Yes.
So there is
Federal
designing
government
out there, it
approved that.
shows those roundabouts, is not turning lanes. What is the status?
The status is the roundabout was approved as part of the finding of no significant impact by the Federal Highway Administration. There's also another roundabout in Mississippi Street. The reason the roundabouts were selected, and the MPO did not advocate for the roundabout, it was the traffic analysis that was done by DOH's consultant.
And when was that? When was that done? What was the year on that?
That study was done in 2019, 2020, and was just approved by the Federal Highway Administration. So they're fully aware of the traffic, and it is designed to handle higher volumes of traffic if need be. The reasons one of the key factors for truckers is travel time. And roundabouts have a much better travel time than stopping people at traffic signals. And so a roundabout actually favors a trucker because they can keep moving as opposed to being stopped for 2 minutes at a stoplight.
And I was just getting ready to defend roundabouts, because I love them. Everybody looks at a roundabout at peak travel time. Now, so it's not any better than a traffic light. What they don't take into consideration is when you pull up there and there's hardly any traffic, you can keep going, as opposed to stopping at a traffic light. And I drive the big trucks, and if the roundabout's done right, there's plenty of room, there's no problem.
Right.
Absolutely, because you can't stop a truck and take off and not lose any speed, because it takes a while to get 80,000 pounds back up to where you were, which uses more fuel, and it is time, but it's also fuel is a big concern right now too. So if they can just keep moving and get their days in, because a lot of them get paid per trip. So if they're going from here down to the barge or down to the loadout on the barge or going down, getting back, getting that next trip. is
And they're
where
not
they-
building the roundabout like the one on the Morgantown.
No.
That's specifically when we had all those open meetings. I remember several of us went to them and said, if you're gonna have a roundabout, you make 2 lanes circles, whereas you have at the mile ground, 2 going into 1, which is causing the problem. This way, the 2 lanes will be wider and continually going. And that's what, if they were gonna do a roundabout, we asked them to do real roundabouts, and they did follow through with that.
And just to clarify, the mile ground roundabout, the plan is ultimately to go into 2 lanes. It's just that portion hasn't
only
been
did
widened
part.
yet.
Oh.
They didn't finish it.
Yeah, they
it's
did.
not done.
When they finish it, it'll have 2 lanes. It'll be
That's good, I never knew.
Well, let
that.
me ask you
Yeah.
So is
one
that
more
a
question
mile
to throw into there.
That should be the.
That's
what's going on now.
And this has to do with the meeting that Senator Clements and Swoop and Beach and
Yeah.
some others attended in Charleston. Where did was it a petition? I'm thinking it's like 1,800 signatures that was reported to me. where did that come from? The truckers not wanting the roundabout and
truckers.
30-some school bus drivers now, and maybe Mike can shed me some light on
Haven't
that.
heard of that either.
Where has this come
My
from?
understanding is that one of the property owners, or a group associated with property owners that would be impacted by the project, solicited people to sign their petition. That is actually included in the environmental document, the environmental assessment. And a lot of the respondents were from out of state. They were from all over the place. And that was taken into account when it was reviewed by the Federal Highway Administration. The one key issue that came up in the environmental assessment was the location of the community garden where one roundabout's supposed to be located. We worked with the county, the city, and the MPO, as well as WVU, to develop a project to mitigate the impact of the loss of the community garden, which was a concern of the Federal Highway Administration, and they accepted the MPO's, the city and county's and WVU's recommendation on that program. So when the project is done, we will have $15,000 in new funding to start up new community gardens to meet that need.
And can you shed any light on the school bus drivers? And here's
I
a question I do have.
Yeah,
I've not heard anything.
Yeah.
That's the first I've heard.
that's the first I've heard.
Okay.
That's the problem.
Okay, and let me ask you, the question I guess I had, and I'm not trying to throw any rain on this one way or the other, but I do want everything out in light.
Sure.
But my question, when we was going to do the one, there was actually 3 on the mile ground. 2 got cut out. Still don't think it's going to work with the one at the light, but I will look and we'll see. Again, but at the bottom of the Easton Hill, I clearly remember that the DOH said roundabouts don't work well coming,
In
an
the bowl.
incline coming into it.
Into a bowl.
And I'm not sure how the Kingwood Pike wouldn't be considered the same situation. I've always wondered that. And I did voice that myself in Charleston on a Monday after session. I did go in and meet. I wanted to meet with Jimmy Riston because I wanted some of these drawings, and I've not received them yet. But also, he wasn't there, so I met with Ms. Hodges, who is the legislative liaison.
Right.
So she answered as many questions as she could for me. But that was one that I had. What is different about this one that's coming down in? And maybe Brian Carr can
I was
shed
gonna
light on
say, I
it.
remember, because we were talking about it
I
then,
thought it's
coming
still-
into a bowl is
But
what
it's
they
not
didn't
doing
like.
it, yeah.
Whereas
It's-
Kingwood
It's not,
Pike-
it's changing now.
Right.
Aren't they moving that down the intersection?
That was what- are
That's
they
what I
moving
think
the
they do. They're
intersection
moving
down?
down the
They're moving the
intersection.
intersection down.
So you're not gonna have that steep incline. That was
Okay.
one of the concerns that you brought up, and I think they
Yeah.
changed that. And again, the key being that when this meeting happened, no one from the MMPO was aware of it. And if we're required to have funding and make decisions, it's a concern as a member of the MMPO that why am I spending hours and the federal government's telling us to do this? And I appreciate, what you're telling us because we would never have known it without your help in knowing what was going on.
In all honesty,
Yeah.
that group did contact me the same as they contacted all the other delegates and the senator and asked if I would like to attend that. I wouldn't have been attending it as a member of the MPO. I would have been attending it as a delegate setting, but I had a little bit of another issue
Yeah.
with education. I could not attend that meeting because I would like to have set in to hear.
Which brings back to the great statement that Dave Bruffy was talking about. We go through all this process, we've taken years, and then a group goes down without any of us knowing what was going on, and we're the group that they were supposed to come before, and because we went through the process of 8 years, and still they didn't get what they wanted, they circumvented the process. And that worries me because, okay, what's next? Willowdale? The mile ground? We can't have this. We have to keep telling Charleston that we are the voice of the MMPO and this community.
Well, I think too, what we have to
Hey,
do.
Bill, everyone, if I may chime in real quick, and yeah, I mean, the frustration is there for everybody. I mean, not just you guys in Morgantown, but us in Charleston, and it is frustrating. Like you say, we do all the work, we do all the studies, we have public meetings, we have articles in newspapers. You know, the word gets out. We have, you know, multiple opportunities for people to speak. And quite honestly, this isn't just Morgantown, it's everywhere. And as everybody has said, is, you know, the MPOs in general, they do everything the right way. They get a consensus. They approve, you know, the project as it is. As you say, you shouldn't be approving designs. But that's why we have public meetings with these things. That's why the state goes out and holds public meetings. And we gather all the input and everything at that time. And then based on all the information,
Right.
all the studies, all the inputs, everything that goes along, and we try to come up here, this is the best solution we have. We just don't throw a roundabout or a turn lane or a signal or anything like that out there just because we want to. It's still got to meet all the guidelines that, you know, that we have to follow. All the rules and regs, you know, all the engineering guidelines, FHWA guidelines, environmental guidelines, and that at the end of the day, we make those decisions at the same time trying to be fiscally responsible. And it is absolutely frustrating when people want to run around the system, you know, days or, you know, just a few days or a few months ahead of us trying to get the project out to bid. And then we seem like we take 3 or 4 steps back and everybody just throws their hands up and says, well, now what do we do?
Yeah.
So it is frustrating on all levels. You know, Commissioner Bloom, I totally agree. It is frustrating that we have to keep coming back to this. And again, it happens everywhere, and I don't know what an answer truly is. But we just have to keep pushing forward as best we can and keep stressing that, hey, this is what we want. This is the best plan moving forward. And with respects to, I kind of hear some people say, well, you know, is this like with Greenback Road? Is this a good place for a roundabout? And again, this isn't just something that, oh, let's just throw a roundabout in there and see what happens. No, we do our studies. I mean, in West Virginia, we're one of the, you know, we're probably behind the times with in incorporating a lot of roundabouts, but we also have other challenges that make incorporating roundabouts more difficult, and a lot of that has to do with, you know, the grades of the intersections, the alignments, and how everything comes together. Just simply our terrain and geography, you know, prevents a lot of places to utilize roundabouts. And in this particular case, it will work. And you know, I've been a lot of places with roundabouts here, you know, Ohio in particular, and other cities that, you know, they work and they work really well. And I understand the roundabout that was put out on the mile ground due to all the circumstances that surrounded it did not operate as smoothly as anybody would have liked. But I think once the completion of the mile ground happens, you will see that roundabout will operate a lot more smoothly than it does right now. And I understand that has left a negative taste in a lot of people's mouths. And it's just like, so it's kind of like a lot of anti-roundabout. But this isn't something we take lightly. We take all this very seriously when we're doing the studies, we're doing the design work and everything else. So anyway, I just wanted to say my 2 cents, and I'll let the meeting
In
commence.
conclusion of maybe this discussion
This is Senator Clements.
Oh, sure.
yes, sir.
I just wanted to comment, I'm gonna have to leave the meeting shortly, I've got another commitment. But the meeting we had there in the highway department, I think the only comment that I had was, make sure we've looked at all alternatives, and apparently you have looked at all the alternatives, and that's all that anybody can ask. And you need to move forward with the project if that's what is needed to be done. The second thing I want to comment on is that I will do everything I can within my power to make that I-79 corridor from I-68 up to the Star City exit a high priority for West Virginia, because there's so much growth, there is so much opportunity there's so much that can happen there if we just get ready. And my biggest complaint has always been we've been too reactionary and not proactive in getting ready for economic development. And I just want you to know that I will do everything in my power to make sure that corridor in there becomes a very high priority for West Virginia's highway funding.
So Senator Clements, thank you very much,
Yes.
and I want to tell you too, it's not just tonight, but whenever we have had things here that we've needed to reach out to you, you've always been
Yes.
available and accessible and helpful. And I know this hour out of your time tonight is very, very much appreciated by our body, and we can't thank you enough, so we appreciate it very much.
Well, what I would like to do is maybe call sometime and call Bill Austin, come over and sit down and look at all this stuff where I can see it. My eyes aren't as good as they used to be, and I really have to
Neither
squint.
ours.
This is tiny.
Read that, and so, you know, when I can sit down and see it, it can work, but so,
It would
please
be
let me
my,
know when you have more meetings, and I'll try to sit in on some of them, and I hope you'll excuse me for leaving so soon, but I do have a prior commitment.
And to the policy board and Senator Clements, and I want to thank him also. He's great to work with, I will tell you. He's a good counterpart down there in Charleston. He and I can work together great. But I would say to the MPO that I know there's also been a meeting called locally wanting delegates and stuff to come in. I would ask Bill to get all the elected officials that serves this area, send out and sit down and explain the process. I'm not sure they understand what the MPO does. Maybe we can clear up some of this stuff by sitting down and, as Senator Clements said, be proactive, bring them in and let them hear what the process is, how it's been going on, and what's happening. Every elected delegate, senator, and everybody. So maybe we can clear up some of this issue out there. As Tom said, the MPO wasn't invited. I do know that the DOH questioned why they weren't. A couple of the members that's there that's called me said they didn't realize they needed to invite them. I don't know, but please, let's call them in, us enlighten everybody, and at least everybody has their eyes open moving forward as to why the decisions are made the way they are.
Well, and in conclusion, I want to just say too, that as a body, there's only certain things that we can do and we cannot do. And what we have done is approve the concept of the improvements of the Greenback Road to move forward. And I think Senator Clements said it very well that, and maybe Brian said it too, that we don't get involved in the design process. With that said, I think what Senator Clements said was once he learned that process had been invented, he learned a lot more of it. Now, I will say this. I'm not a fan of roundabouts. Mike Kelly and I are friends, and we can just agree to disagree on that.
exactly.
And I'll say this too. If likely if a road was going through my property, I'd be calling Joe Statler and saying, get me a meeting with, I understand it, and I appreciate that. But, and I do think that as an elected representative, you know, if you have constituents, then yes, meet and talk. The thing that bothered me, and maybe it was just a rumor that came back in this whole conversation, was the old thing that we hear that just irritates the heck out of me. And that is, well, we're going to show, the rumor is, and I'll put quote rumor, but it was told directly to me, well, this project's going to be put on the shelf because you guys in Monongalia County can't speak from the same voice.
I was also told.
And that is just absolutely the wrong approach. Now, whether that came from DOH, which I hope it didn't, but if it did, we need to clarify that before making that statement and saying a project's shelved and we don't speak with one voice, just simply reach out to us and say, what's your all's opinion on Greenback Road?
You know, back when I alluded to this a little bit in one other meeting, but you and I and Joe and Patty, the MPO is new for the state since 2003. You know, we were involved in all that. If you recall, when we were having those discussions, how many times we heard that? Is you guys need something because you are not speaking with one voice. And when Governor Wise appointed all, we had everything in place pretty much, so when it was time to form an MPO, we were up and running right off the bat. And so, you know, he came and appointed us, and he told us that same thing, you know. So, and at that time, the Northern Outlet was
The issue.
the issue. And they told us, what, 17 different entities had went to Charleston about where that road should be. And that's what, you know, so, and what was great about this MPO, I personally loved the idea about it, was speaking with one voice. We all get together and say, and we all have all walks of
And it's
life.
working.
We all represent
It's
the
working.
public.
It's working.
And I've said for years, this is the closest voice that John Q. Public has to making anything happen within the roadways.
Right.
There's no other entity that they can go with and speak their concerns and all that. The problem is when they go, they don't get answered. What the state should be saying is when somebody comes down or say, have you went to your
That's-
MPO?
Thank you.
They should.
Now back to,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
back to this
And-
conversation.
And just as a point of business, what's going to happen is if we move projects from Tier 2 to Tier 1 and so forth, and since the interchange project actually came from unfunded, the impact's going to
Trickle down.
dominate all the way down to
Right.
like Tier 3.
That's fine.
Yeah.
And so what I would ask is, once the board has decided on Tier 1, I will work with the consultants to figure out tiers.
To reshuffle.
Yeah.
That's
To-
fine.
to do
the
Tier one's
reshuffle.
what we're looking at.
I would, did you have a suggestion to move something here, David? or-
I had two anecdotal things, and this relates to what Joe had asked. I had a petition with 120 names on it once, and they gave me the phone numbers, and when I called, about 6 of them were dead. I've
Couldn't
got-
hear.
Low.
Yeah.
So they died immediately after they signed it, or?
I've got 50 drivers, and we have monthly safety meetings, and we travel through those roundabouts every day. I just texted my operations officer and asked him if we'd ever had the roundabouts brought up as a safety issue at any of those monthly meetings, and he said no, with the exception of when I got in a fender bender in one. Other than that, they have never been raised as a safety
I just
issue.
texted the superintendent, asking the same thing. If we
Yeah,
had
no
any
one
bus
cares.
drivers, no.
Okay. Just as a quick comment on roundabouts, it was a fender bender, and the accident data on roundabouts is they're much safer. It's those little fender benders that you have rather than a
Then
T-bone
someone getting
or.
hurt, yeah.
Well, I was gonna say, I was gonna bring that up. If
Yeah.
I'm barreling down an intersection, I got 80,000 pounds, and you come this way, you're most likely gonna die.
Yes.
But if I'm gonna encounter you in a roundabout, I'm just gonna kick you off to the side or whatever.
So
say, yes,
one
they
thing
are
we've
safe.
learned, if we see a Delaney oil truck going down the road.
That's right.
Take it out of the way.
You know,
Well, I think, the one thing is, like I asked, that you bring in the elected
Right.
Yes.
delegates and
And
senators, and so at least they know the MPO stance and where it came from and how it become there. And maybe we won't read in the paper
Right.
that people
Or against.
are against the MPO when I'm not sure where they understand how the MPO works.
Delegate Stellar too, and I think Commissioner Bloom was in the room when we were working with this whole transition for this year. One of the suggestions that we made to the director was after session ended,
Right.
to have periodic, that could be every
Meetings.
quarter, with all the elected folks here, because quite frankly, unless you're
Right
really
here.
into this and the MPO, you don't have enough time to know what's even, so it's our duty to
Yeah, I'll guarantee
inform
you,
them and.
they don't.
So.
They do not, and some of them serves on transportation on the House side and some on the Senate side. And I'm sure that they've never saw this particular document. And just for the record, when we do them from now on,
Yeah,
can we
make
make it
it
a
bigger.
little
Make it a
bit
little
bigger?
bigger.
Make them a
I
little
know,
bigger.
I
I
can-
apologize for that.
Got on the readers.
I will say also, on the outreach effort, Ms. Moberly, our new shared employee with the county, is doing an excellent job of doing an updated newsletter that will be going out at least quarterly. And with the release of this document, she will be releasing a special edition of the newsletter announcing the availability. So we are gearing up to do even more involvement. And I'll talk to you about the timing, but we will definitely set up a meeting with the
So-
legislature.
And I would say to you that just automatically send it out to the elected
They're
senators
on
and
there.
stuff. That way, if we delete it and send it out of there, we've done it on our own. It isn't, it wasn't, the information wasn't sent to us.
And we have put those folks on our mailing list already.
Appreciate
And I
that.
think
Thank you.
that's an excellent idea because, as Joe knows, the school board, we invite all of our House of Delegates, senators,
Yeah.
whatever,
No.
once a year, and we,
Yeah.
That was an
we
idea
feed
that
them.
we can, yeah.
Yeah, we feed them,
My
so
one
we should do
request
the
is let me
same
do
thing
that
here,
for
bring them
education.
and entertain them.
So we have some.
I have one suggestion or
Yes, sir.
recommendation is one recommendation, 2 comments, and 1 question. So the recommendation would be, we're about $8 million now in your new
That's
math.
Right.
If you look at project M7 on the tier 2, and you go up and you look at, I think it's M64, where that M7 is, and I know this is important to the city, the intent is for the city to build a new
Interchange there.
Richwood Avenue connector right there.
By the convenience store.
By the convenience store.
Right.
And I think it would be prudent, since we've already got the big improvement on Willie Street in Tier 1, to move that intersection up into
That is-
Tier 1 as well. So that's my recommendation, if that's all right with you.
Yeah.
And what was, what's the figure on that?
$2 million.
2 million.
2 billion.
So we still
But-
got 6 change.
Yeah.
Okay, except, I want to throw out another idea, and I agree with that. So you have roughly 6 million. Look one up above. The DuPont improvements, now, it's at a ranking of 50.9, but I'll tell you, next year, if those 100 trucks are going through Westover, that's gonna be 100. So what I'm looking at is, how can we move, my suggestion, because that interchange is not gonna be built right away.
Right.
So we need to do something for the Westover residents in the interim. Now, what I'm gonna throw out, okay, go ahead.
Tim,
Yes, sir.
please take a look at that and tell us where we stand if we move that, because the price of that DuPont Road
It's
improvement
11.
will,
So you see
will
that
drop.
it just dropped to 8.8 million.
Oh, we're
So
getting
if
there.
it is in tier 1, it's gonna cost you less, and that's close enough where I can make that 125,000 balance. So that would fit perfectly in tier 1.
Okay,
What about,
we need to throw out a couple more so we have choices here.
yeah, go right ahead. Well, that's enough, okay, let's call that option 1.
Yeah.
Okay, what,
Okay.
go with, that's great,
DuPont.
yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Can I give my 2 comments and
Yeah,
then?
please make your
So,
2 comments.
there's 2 local things that are tier 2, and I'm not suggesting to move them up. I just want to say we could be back here a year from now, asking for maybe those to move up into a tier 1. That one is that connector trail between the campus connection.
The campus
So
connector.
We do
Yeah.
have.
What number is that, do you know?
Oh,
M122? Is that what it
yeah,
is?
I started here.
It's called campus.
M122, yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
M122.
campus connector.
There is
Yep.
funding
Okay.
right now to do the design work on that. And as I understand it, the next step is after you get the design work done, you can go after these TAP grants
Right.
that may not fully fund that. So there's gonna be a delta. So I just wanted to put that on everyone's
Okay.
radar screen. There's no reason that the consultant said, whether it's in tier 1 or tier 2, it can still move on this grant process first, but until the funding, we can move that up as well. The other suggestion is that, or comment, that we've got Grumbine's Island, there's a couple of other downtown things
Right.
on there. My suggestion would be, and I think everybody recognizes that's a really high priority. Now, whether you could throw 2 million or 4 million and fix the problem, I don't know. My suggestion would be is to ask Bill to couple other things together, like the downtown network, and look at those into tier 2 as a grouping. So,
Right.
because one has to work with the other.
Right.
And that's not moving them from tiers.
Right.
And I will comment, we actually have identified the need for a downtown area study, which would look at everything from changing the one-way street pairs, whether that works or not, Grumbine's Island, Beechhurst Avenue and all of that. And that is a strong recommendation of the plan now. It doesn't show up on this list because we're proposing to ask the state for planning funds.
Right.
To
And I
do
think
that.
there's something on here, I can't
So
remember
do-
where it is, it says, like High Street,
High
Willie
Foundry,
Street.
that's-
Intersection.
That would be a
Yeah.
perfect thing to
Precisely.
group it all together,
Group 'em all
because
together.
if you're gonna reroute things, it's gotta come right
Right.
downtown, so.
So,
and-
pardon my ignorance, do planning grants, this is just construction?
This is actual construction type.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So can we put that was the,
We
Bill Dwecky
theoretically
was
could.
asking, he's not here tonight, and Dave Harshbarger was
He's
right
here.
in there with him.
Dave's
Dave-
here.
Hi, Dave.
Hey
I'm
there.
speaking for you.
We theoretically could put like $500,000 in there for a study.
What?
Um,
I would do something like
And
that,
ask
just
for
to make
flex-
sure, because if you don't have the study, then you're never gonna get the project.
Into
So
a tier one?
We could put it in.
we could
tier
put
one.
it, you could put 500 in tier one.
And the type of study we would be looking at would be a very detailed micro-simulation model. There was one done a while back in 2012 by Andrew Nichols that was not well received, frankly, because the downtown business owners who had requested it, the study had taken so long, they had forgotten they had requested it. And so they raised all kinds of cane about it, but this would be,
Well, actually, Bill, there was also a lot of concern over loss of parking.
yes, and I understood that.
That was
too.
probably as much or big of an issue why the whole thing fell apart.
Right, yeah.
Was the loss of parking, and it's just kind of like, nope, that's it, because they lose one parking spot, and they had a problem with it.
It was actually
So,
5 parking spaces on Fayette Street.
Parking, ride the bus.
My last thing
I think
is
you need
more
a
of
sign like
is
that,
a
parking ride the
question,
bus on a
Yeah.
t-shirt.
And that is, I don't find Chaplain Hill improvements anywhere on this plan, but it's under that tip already, I-79 exit, Chaplain Road.
No,
starts
there
at
there is
Interchange.
a Chaplain Hill Road improvement project, and Tim helped me find it. I believe it's a tier, I'm sorry?
Chaplain Hill Road or
Yeah.
Chaplain Road?
I saw the
Yeah, it's a multimodal project.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's M121, it's in tier 4 right
On the
now.
second page, right here. Chaplain Hill.
Oh, okay,
That's past my
17 million.
yeah. Only thing I would say to that is that's a very, very important project, and you wanna talk about school buses, everyone comes and goes on that road,
Yeah.
so.
Well, okay, but I'll let Jenny, you said you wanted.
I like that project because it's multimodal. So the only other one that is, and there's a whole bunch of different improvements in there, but there's this one that would make a big difference because we're working on, we have a design for improvements to the park right next to the dam on Don Knotts Boulevard or South University or whatever you want to call it. And it's M71, and it's, that one says White Park Caperton Trail Connection, but really, we're kind of wanting it, Drew at the city knows more about it, but we're really wanting it more toward the dam. But I think that the request to the state had been for a bridge design. It's a pedestrian bridge. It's one of the only pedestrian bridges we've ever asked for. And we've asked 2 times for design to be able to have funds to design that bridge. I think a class has already also, an engineering class has already designed that bridge. But that bridge is key to economic development in the wharf, to connecting up into First Ward neighborhood, to connecting South University, those kids to get down and onto the trail without going down.
Oh, so you're talking about a bridge crossing the highway?
Yes.
Bridge
Okay.
crossing,
I was
crossing
thinking
Don
railroad bridge.
Knotts.
I was
Are
gonna
you
say,
asking
Yeah.
to fund the design?
The
into
design.
Tier 1?
Okay.
The design.
What,
And,
do you
yes.
have a ballpark number on that?
Not for the design.
Well, the ballpark that we have, just in talking with the highway designers at the state, is that it's typically between 10 and 20% of the cost of the project. So that's right now funded as approximately $3 million project. So we would ask for $300,000
For the
to,
design. Okay.
Yeah.
Can you put that little 8-letter word multimodal on that? Because that's an area of interest for us too.
Okay.
That's a high-speed corridor and people getting on
Yeah.
and off, and we don't like to stop.
If we're asking for the design on that, in that, Tim, please make sure you have the word multimodal on that. I just want to make sure you heard Mr. Bruffy's comments.
But that's integral to redeveloping the Wharf District, the economic part, that it's to the park and to getting to the trail, and its safety, and it's, actually, I think people in South Park would go and use that, so.
Yeah.
So what I've got on my list is, we've added the Willie Street, DuPont Road, Grumvines Island, and the design, and design for this project.
Right. Tim, did you hear
Which
all
is
of that?
probably over, a
It's
little bit
over.
over what we're taking off, but we'll figure it out.
I didn't catch all of those, but anything that is touching downtown, you'll see in column Q, it says downtown study in green. And so there's a whole series of projects that kind of touch that area, and I've tried to mark them here.
Yeah, and what we'll do is, once we get that final, we'll send it out to the policy board with that noted.
Is there any chance with the additional money we have coming in, I think it's up to 8 billion now.
Right.
Don't know how it jumped that much, but 8 billion, is there any chance some of these tiered projects can be moved faster if,
They need
and
design
there's a
work.
time limit on it, so is there a chance if some of them are shovel-ready, it helps us?
Certainly. And the one that I would point to would be the Van Voorhees Road, the second part of that project, the one that, they thought they fixed Van Voorhees, they didn't fix it, all they fixed was the drainage. And they designed the next segment from West Run to Baker's Ridge. And then we had them go back and design the the correct
Right,
segment.
they went the wrong way.
They went the wrong way. They have the design for Van Voorhees from West
To Baker's
Run
Ridge.
to Baker's Ridge. So that is the lowest hanging fruit that we have.
Let me
As far as
ask
getting
you,
the
Because that's
project
already
ready.
designed.
It's already designed.
That's something that we really need to work on also, because that's going to come up quickly, where we can start putting this money at. And that's another thing we need to talk about as a group, so that we can have those, I don't call them wish list, needs list out there, because some of it even includes sewer and water and that type of improvements.
Well, and Mr. Stadler, unfortunately, you have been, well, and very fortunate in some ways, you've been at the legislation, but we did have a meeting with Secretary Riston, and we discussed several of these high priority projects with him, and that was one of those projects.
Okay.
So we have brought it to their attention.
Now, clarify
Yeah,
this.
and Bill, I will also say that that list of projects that you sent to us for consideration to replace essentially what the I-79 connector, that Van Voorhees connection from West Run to Baker's Ridge, that was also my high recommendation for them to move forward with as well, because it is for all intents and purposes shovel ready, and it also could be a jumping point to, if we ever can resurrect the I-79 connector. It's a good way to keep that going. So I also forward that on for a recommendation myself. So
That's a good
just
point.
thought I'd let you know.
Yeah.
So where would the northern bypass, where would that go in this plan? Is that in any
It
of the
is.
tiers?
I don't.
4,000.
I know. But, I mean, we have funds. If we had bothered to design it, we could be working on it right now.
Well, I think the good
We never
question,
would.
the good question though that's asked is that, and these are, I want to make sure I'm clear on this, Bill. So, just by chance, let's just say that there is this extra money, and we're working with the state. They say, hey, you could get West Virginia 7 corridor improvements that's down here, or I'm sorry, Van Voorhees that's in tier 2, 8.7 million. If the funding's there, we don't necessarily have to move that
No.
into a tier 1. It can go right into that TIP or the.
That's right.
The funded projects.
And we
right?
considered that when we were originally developing this list. It was
Yeah.
like, let's Tier 2 is low-hanging fruit, they're more likely to just go ahead and
Right.
grab it. That's
Right.
why it was in Tier 2.
Yeah, so it doesn't
Smart.
have to be.
Okay, well, technically, once this money, and this is a question to Brian, once this money has come, is it still considered federal dollars? It's given
always
to the
federal
state,
dollars. It's always federal dollars.
so it will take our approval.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's all federal dollars.
Okay.
okay.
Yeah, once it's federalized, it stays federalized.
Is
Other
there,
thoughts or?
Well, I have another project, but it's not tier 1 and 2, so it'll be after we decide on this. I'm trying to get a clarification now where we are of when we leave here. So have we agreed to option A, option B, or what if we agreed to?
Well, we have those options and Tim has
Yeah.
them. And so what I would ask him to do is
Try
kind
and-
of put them together and say how much over and how much under we are.
Yep.
Okay,
Tim?
we're over by 4 or 5, right?
So if we move M106 DuPont Road, you're
Right.
basically even for
That's
tier
all of
1.
it.
okay.
And that's the only move you can make. with
But that was the 8, not
Yeah,
11,
that was
right?
8.7.
That was the 8.
There's
so
a
that-
3 million difference.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, there's only 8 difference, right?
There was 8.
8 difference
What,
roughly. Yeah.
what exactly did we count against the industrial park, the Harmony Grove interchange? How much money did we count against that?
10,
It's approximately $10 million.
Which I think is high. But,
I was gonna say, we need to make sure we show
Okay.
somewhere in this document or in this table or something like that, that while it's trying to explain the whole TIF and the reason why we're only counting approximately $10 million against the cap versus
And
30 or 40.
Well, it should say alternative funding dependent on the right.
Right.
Yep.
Would help.
And the explanation for that, Brian, is that we dedicated a portion of the anticipated revenue into the revenue stream.
right.
Instead
Right, I
of.
just want to make sure
No, that's
everybody
good.
is aware
That's a
that
good
that's
point.
what,
Put it
what's
in there.
happening.
Yeah, it will definitely
And
be done.
it needs to be stressed in in how whatever goes out to the public, it needs to be, very elementary explanation as to why.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll bring up, I'm a little hesitant. One of the biggest projects in Tier 1, I'm not too thrilled about. I'm really confused why we have, and I'd love to see what exactly the West Virginia 705 corridor improvements for 17.9 million really is.
We actually have in the draft document a schematic plan of how it is cleaning up intersections to make operations safer and more efficient. It's the installation of median, including tree lines to create a boulevard impact. A lot of the folks in the community have said they want a gateway into the community. It does that.
And I'm gonna be upfront, I'm opposed to this, because I think our money should be going into projects that really need, that's like beautifying things.
Well, Sure.
And I would like to see some of these more important projects get put in that should be, I just don't see that need, and especially 17.9 million. That,
Well,
I'm one person.
Maybe this is an easier way to do it.
I-
So we're,
If I may add on to
Sure.
that one with the 705 corridor improvements, and I think we all would agree that there's some things that need to be done there. The difficulty with that is you've got development everywhere, and everybody's got their own driveway, everybody's got their own access, and nobody wants to play nice. And nobody wants to share access, because that's the only way that you can start limiting your access points and being able to garner enough of the space that you want. It's a fight all the way to the end. With any of these where you're trying to talk about access, improvements.
I'm just throwing out my.
Well, just
concern.
the simple phrase to explain it
Yeah.
is it improves traffic operation efficiency, and it improves safety. It makes the corridor capable of handling more traffic and people traveling through that corridor more safe.
well, let's do this.
Yeah.
Let's do
I mean,
this.
that's what the
I
705
understand.
project
But look at the
does.
other projects.
We're
we could
all
do.
in
but
agreement.
see-
But hold on,
Yeah.
hold on, hold on,
Okay.
hold on.
Sure.
let's just keep this simple.
I was gonna say
because
something nice.
We're kind of playing with monopoly money here.
Oh, it should be
Uh,
like Milan.
Because of
So
Milan, that's
where
right.
we're at
Right.
is
So,
from, unless somebody else has something else, we're $3 million away from getting everything that we would like to have in tier one. Why don't you just go back and sharpen your pencil a little bit in your estimates on the 705? And if you reduce that project by $3 million into the tier one and take whatever you reduced and put it in tier two.
Yeah.
That can be done easily.
We
As a
can-
phasing?
We could, we could
As a
scale it
phasing.
down and maybe a phasing.
And that way you get your capacity and you still have it in a tier one. And if we realize the money, then we can move that way
I will work with the consultant on that.
to make that happen.
I think that's a fair,
That's an easier way
that's
to
a
do
fair
it.
compromise.
And
I didn't mean to
what
do
I-
that.
And
no,
clarify,
no.
what's the $3 million project that we want to add to tier one? Is
Well,
it-
what we wanted to add to tier one
Some
is we
studies.
wanted the Willie Street or the Richwood North M7,
Right.
and we wanted two studies, for lack of a better term, Grumbine Island downtown,
Yeah.
500,
And the trail
and
connector.
the design on the trail connector at 300.
Yeah.
So it was 800 there.
It's a tail connector bridge.
Let me ask you, how many times have we studied that Grumbine Island?
A lot.
A lot.
I've been here since '71, it was
So
told
why
me
do
they
we
were
need to
doing
study
this.
it again?
Well,
Yeah.
and to clarify,
Yeah.
the study that we're doing includes Grumbine's Island, but this is a much
More comprehensive.
more comprehensive
Of the-
study.
Change
It's
the
looking,
name to-
for example,
let's
Mr.
go to
Staller, there's a recommendation in there to change Willie Street, right?
MMMP.
Well, how is that going to impact downtown
I
traffic?
call it the 3 MPO.
It's looking
That's the buses.
holistically at the downtown, not,
Okay.
it's folding Grumbine's Island into the larger picture.
So that you see how it affects all the rest of it.
I mean,
Well, I
you
hope
just
if we study
go
it, we
there and
finally
stop.
do something to
Yeah,
solve
I
the
know.
problem.
That's the thing. But see, if we had it shovel-ready, then when we have money coming in, we'd be ready. So I think anything that we can see this year, that we can get the planning study done, we'd be setting up for better
Okay.
for future years.
Yeah.
What I was gonna say about the Patterson, about the, West Virginia 705 corridor improvements is that there's sort of different needs in different parts of the community. So in cities, like say in Star City, their need might be that they would just like to see 2 or 3 crosswalks that they've asked for a gazillion years. And when you just kind of don't make those improvements, then you don't feel as much like a community that you can actively make your community better, help your community to compete with other communities that have crosswalks. So the same thing with Pattison. I mean, I keep saying Pattison, but 705. That if you have gateways that look better, that function better, that are more inviting, that it's easier for us to compete as a city and a community because you are upping your game that little bit and you're more equipped to compete. If things just look like a raceway, people treat them like a raceway. If they can move through them quickly and efficiently, but have some greenery or have some of the other improvements that make things look more like other communities rather than raceways. So it still would function quickly, but be more look like a community.
Well, and I think to put it, if we make that adjustment, and you're exactly right, but what it would do, it still keeps that project as,
About $14 million.
actually, it's a top funded project in tier one.
I know.
And one of the things we might consider doing is simply shortening the length of the project a little bit. That might be one way we look at trimming it, but I'll work with the consultants on that and figure it out.
All right.
We could easily do that, Bill. That's what I was thinking as well. No problem.
Okay. Okay.
Thank
I
you.
have one other, but it's not tier one, but I don't want to get to it until we're.
Anybody else have anything before?
No, I'm just thinking about
Let's
talking.
ask the people who are,
Yeah.
Jeff or I don't know if Dave's still on or not.
Hey, this is Dave. I very much approve of the discussion and where we're going with this, so I would vote in favor of everything we've discussed.
Thank you.
Except we can't.
Yeah, and this is Jeff. I concur. DuPont Road's my number one on that Tom mentioned, but I like the discussion very much. And if we can group some of those smaller ones together and throw them in there and get more done, that sounds like a great idea too.
Good, thank you. Anybody else?
I'm good with DuPont. We're
I
gonna need
figured
that.
you would.
Yeah, we're gonna need it real quick.
Yeah.
And one caveat, at the last public meeting, I think it was the gentleman from Westover,
Yeah, Mr. Solomon.
and he
Yeah.
said, no, at our
Oh,
last work session, that was a very high priority. That he wasn't pushing to get it into
No.
tier 1, but he just noted that with the other improvements. So I think we've accomplished
Yeah.
that. So
yeah,
I think we'll-
okay. So I think that's
Mr.
all the
Blue?
tier 1. I will
Yeah.
probably be up late with the consultants figuring out the lower tiers.
And this one, you all received just recently, and it would be for a tier 3. So it's not a 1, it's not a 2, but I'd still like to put it in the 3, which kind of takes away from what you were asking for, which is that Milan Park project, and it kind of modifies it to what we call the improved vehicle multimodal access to Milan Park, which is a 4-lane divided highway from exit 155 to Milan Park, 2 miles of new roadway. The estimation is 44 million. Now, why we put it over in tier 3? Because, it's not affecting the tier 1 or 2. Now, I know I have to move something out of tier 3, I think I'm being told, but I would like to consider that now. I'm gonna ask for 2 minutes to suspend the rules, if I can, if Ryan Lynch wants to just generally, are you just explaining what we all just received? Because we all know, the county commissioners, what's been going on. We've not been able to share any of that information because we have multiple meetings. Would you be willing, you have to come up here because they won't be able to hear you. Sure. If you just want to explain what you're doing and what you're getting rid of, yeah.
you're right.
Thank you.
I'm good. Thank you. So, what's colloquially called the road to Milan Park has been discussed for probably 3, 4, maybe longer years. And it's been part of the Westridge Road program since the inception. It does sit towards the rear of our development, so we have to work our way through it, or to it. And we've spent probably close to $3 million in pre-construction expenses between right-of-way acquisition and design, and especially kind of being propelled forward by the exit 155 project to make sure that it can tie into that appropriately. So our traffic consultant, Amy Stodd from HDR, and Westridge's new Director of External Relations are with me tonight, and we are in the early process of developing a grant application with the County Commission, who I believe is considering being the applicant for the infra and rural grant applications from the infrastructure bill that recently passed. So those projects, or those requests for grant applications, went out a couple days ago and are due in about 2 months. And so we see it as a great opportunity to accelerate this road if the grant is awarded, and really kind of build it to the full program that I think a lot of people want, to provide better access to the...
And it does help if it's in our tier 3 position.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's more of just supporting that it's an important project. And we have all been looking at that. So that's all I'm asking, that we put it in tier 3 it now. Let's see what kind of grant money we can get. And then you talk about shovel ready. That's the kind of thing we'd be able to move right away on it.
Do you all have the numbers that you could give to Bill, so when he works the
44
calculation
million
that-
is,
to get that into tier 3 and then
Yes.
bump down some
What's
threes down
the
to four?
project right now through that area? What's in here now for that?
For tier 3 or
So I
for
think
For
Chaplain?
the access road to Chaplain Hill?
17.
Yeah, tier 4.
Tier 4, 17
I didn't
million.
realize it was 17 million. I thought
I
it was
think
less,
that's-
but...
yeah, it's 17 million.
Okay.
But they have an inflation factor in that, so.
Okay.
And so that's why.
Okay.
Out
If it was tier 1, it'd probably be 6
I'm
months.
sorry, what?
Okay.
30 years would be 30 years, it better be a pretty big inflation.
Well, so
At this rate,
the 44 million is based off of dollars in the next year or two.
Yeah.
But
We
that,
believe we're gonna be built, it's gonna be built a lot quicker, but we're trying to get the infrastructure grant, and we need this to just
I have no problem with
Yeah.
it because I think, Mr. Lynch, is this my Veterans Highway that I've been waiting on?
Yes.
Does it have my
With the veteran.
flag area
Yeah,
there?
We'll put a flag.
Oh, we can get that.
Not
before you
one.
do that.
Okay. We'll
You
put
want a
the
whole bunch of
up.
flags.
And you wanted roundabouts all the way through it, is that correct?
The
Whatever
Statler
the
One
roundabout.
flag in
designers
each
say.
roundabout.
Well, I can tell you, if it's 30 years out, I'll be probably qualified to be named then because you gotta be dead.
If it's 30 years, we're all gonna be upset because I don't see it being that long.
Okay.
Well, I think,
Last phase.
and Bill had a meeting of folks, that a lot of us attended about some of these grant opportunities that are
Right.
coming up, and that one fit into one of those categories, right, Bill?
I think it
What we're
would.
talking about, so that's
How,
very good.
to what
It
extent
would probably be
could
the
it be
rural
funded?
Roll, that's
And
what,
The rural
somebody
program?
changed, didn't someone who now is in charge of the rural that?
It's a federal highway project.
Oh, okay, oh, I
It's
thought
not
it
as-
was the state, okay.
Yeah.
well, there's probably a state
Well,
interface with that.
There's a employee of the Federal Highways that works in the grant application group that is from West Virginia.
Yeah.
So we have
We
that,
have it
as well as the
in,
unique
possibly.
influence that our federal representatives
Right.
have, hopefully.
I can tell you, and I'm all for it, wish you could start building it tomorrow, but as long as it's taking to do 150, I don't have big hopes of anything.
155.
150.
No, he
150.
needs
No, it needs 150.
Harmony Grove.
Yes.
Oh.
So then,
That should've been-
will there be a way for this, for people to get under the highway over to the other side of the highway? For
So,
multimodal?
so there's, I think we're requesting this for the TMP program. The grant application, we intend to enhance the planned multimodal of 155, bundle those together,
Right.
and then create kind of a direct connection from the bridge. And perhaps even on the eastern side of the bridge. We've had like one early conversation with Mr. Bruffy too about trying to enhance transit. So this is the grant applications, the notice of funding opportunities went out, and they put a big emphasis on equitable access.
Yep.
And so,
And you've got a lot of equity in that area.
Yes.
Yep.
So,
Okay.
well,
so,
in getting the people from the city of Morgantown to the community resources at Milan Park is a good story.
Well,
I mean, it
and-
fits that.
in Star City
Mhm.
Yep.
and
Right.
Granville
Granville,
and
Westover.
So,
Scotts Run
Well,
area.
and
Would-
I
would
was
you
gonna
be-
say the Scotts Run
Yeah.
Blacksville area
yes.
would benefit greatly. And
Yeah.
if
Well,
we can
those
get our,
things, yeah.
Make sure
our
you go
precious
25
Renaissance
west
school going, it's perfect. Yeah, it's a good
So-
access to that, bringing our.
So, does
kids
everyone
from
feel
Western into the
comfortable
county.
putting it at tier 3 for right
Yep.
now? I
Yeah.
mean, it's just to try and get the grant. Well,
And I will have to
Yeah,
find
well-
$44 million to move out of.
If you need, I will work with you on that.
Okay.
Wait a minute.
I know.
What are we taking out?
I don't know.
Well, there's a lot.
Well, at tier
that you could-
3,
at tier
that's
3, there's-
2050,
Yeah, there's a
so.
lot of things you could take out and move
So,
it
My
forward.
borough
when you,
plot, too.
when you take something out and then we hope that there's a grant, do you have a little spot that you put it in that
We
then?
put an alternative funding,
Yeah, it goes alternative funding.
Yeah.
alternative funding dependent. It won't disappear from the plan, it will simply not be in the funding stream.
It may only be $10 million. It may only be, yeah, if you get 30 or 35 million of it.
If something comes up that is completely funded, then it.
Yeah, or if it's
Pops
fully
right
funded,
in.
it's not even in there.
Right.
That's right.
So I think we,
That's what we're hoping
So-
for.
The
Is-
widenings all the way down there.
I'm good with that. Is the northern bypass in here anywhere?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Under alternative funding dependent or?
And it's,
I think we
It's right
kept
below
it
the
at,
copyright.
because we actually downscaled the project, if you remember, that it only connects to
just
Van
goes
Voorhees
over,
instead of
which is
taking, it's the alternative funding dependent, I believe, for
Project
111 million.
C9.
Yes?
C9, the third one.
C9.
All right.
Yeah,
So
And
it's-
it's
Oh.
in there.
It's estimated at 72 million, probably because it's got a very high factor for being a very late funded project.
Yeah.
Did that project include the Mon River Bridge?
It does include the bridge, and there's lots of inflation
That's right
factors
below it,
because
isn't
it is a bridge and because it's future year.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I can look at it right now and tell you, even in future years, shoot, even in current dollars, 72 million not even gonna cover getting across
It's
the
a,
road.
I thought it's 131, C10.
Yeah.
Closer to 200.
It's C10,
Right below it.
131.
The one
So
below.
that's the southern one, closer to.
There's two of them.
Two of
Okay,
them.
I see what
That
you're
goes to
saying.
the
You split it.
industrial park. C9 is the northern one.
Okay, just so I see it there, I'm good.
All right, anybody else? I know we
Great.
went long.
That's
Patty?
some- I
No,
just,
sorry, go ahead.
I'm just gonna ask that if you're gonna remove projects from tier 3, not to take out any of the widening on 79.
I would absolutely
Oh,
agree
no, we
with
won't.
No, that won't
From
even,
one-
yes.
That won't-
Okay.
No,
that won't be
that's
Both of those two projects.
Granville and Westover.
No.
Exactly.
No, we
that-
agree.
We've
Okay.
already heard the impact, the
Yeah,
importance
yeah.
of
We have-
the
We need it
interstate.
for the
so-
other, the Harmony Grove, yeah, that's the last thing we can do.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay,
good.
So-
I think we have,
Anyone
I
else?
think we have an agreement.
Ryan, thank you all too for being
Thank
here.
you.
Thank you.
thank you for being here.
Well,
Okay.
if nothing else, I know we ran a little bit long tonight, but I think it's been a good discussion, so you'll get that worked up, get it to us, and then
Right.
it can go out for public comment.
Yeah. We'll,
So Bill, if I could just clarify our task in front of us.
Okay.
yep,
$2.2 million over in tier 1, which is something that I think Stantec can easily adjust and work
Okay.
with. I'd consider that a net 0. But we're 13 million over for tier 2, so clearly there's going to be adjustments at the bottom of tier 2. And now 55 million over for tier 3, mostly
Right.
because of the 44 million we just added. So that's the task in front of us, is just reconciling those two.
Okay.
And we would trust you all and work
Yeah.
with Bill to do that, and
1 and 2 are what we're working on.
Right.
it's
1 and
also
2
bought
1 and
down.
2
Yeah,
are the-
1 and 2, yeah, the others are.
Yeah.
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 We'll do, the-
Yeah.
and what will happen, none of the projects will disappear.
Right.
Right.
They just go into
Just do that.
alternative.
Okay.
Well, so does the, what is it, 44 substitute for the other Chaplain Hill project?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
a very good point.
So they
However,
would-
it's already in tier 4, so it's not counting
Oh.
against our.
It's not a-
Shoot. I thought we had a little
Yes,
good
but
math
no.
there for you,
Yeah.
sorry.
Nice try.
Just crank up the inflation.
Thank you all very much.
Crank down the
Crank down
inflation.
the inflation.
All right. And what we will do is, we'll finalize the spreadsheet, get it to you, it may be tomorrow, but we will open the public comment period.